Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce, Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 13th of December 2024, Friday the 13th. Unlucky for some. I, of course, don't believe that claptrap. I just want to start the video off today by reminding people and thanking people for being absolutely amazing. Thanks, team. That we have started a fundraiser. I'm going to be doing it live this afternoon. I pushed it back to 2:30 this afternoon with Jonathan Fink and Rick the Ukrainian, where we're talking about, we're going to talk Ukraine in general, so it won't just be about the fundraiser, but we are also all doing these separate elements of the fundraiser, the Christmas trucks trucks under the Christmas tree, car for Ukraine. This is my one. We are doing really, really well. It's actually not there. It's now 6,911 euros. So almost 70% there. And I haven't even done a live stream about it yet. So we're likely to move on to a second truck. And fun fact, we might do a convoy out to Ukraine, myself and Jonathan Fink, in order to deliver those trucks. So I'll keep you posted about that. But yeah, really good news that you guys have come up with the goods. Please continue to do so. And I'll do that that fundraising live later on today. Right, let's go to the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. By the way, the link will be in the description for the fundraising, and also the caveats to the general staff figures, as ever, are in the description too. Now, what can we see today? Fairly similar personnel losses, 1,390 to what we have seen over the last week. 5 tanks, 31 armoured personal vehicles. So tanks a little bit below average. Armoured personnel vehicles are above average. 6 artillery systems, low again in that category. So that's interesting. That's been consistently low, really. The odd spike here and there, but for the last week or so. 50 vehicles and fuel tanks. In fact, let's go and check Dell's stats out. Dell's moved house, so I can't go for a pint with him locally anymore. But I hope his house moving has been successful. Right. Let's go to look at the stats for artillery losses, shall we? The daily stats. So that's this one up here. I will highlight the row. There we go. And we are looking at 31, 28, oh no, it's APVs, you silly man. Artillery, 6, 5, 3, 3, 3, 3, 12. I mean, when we were used to seeing days of like 60 and whatnot, it's been a very, very low week. And indeed, before that, it was 12, 20, 21, 26, 23, 30, 14, 23, 34. So, you know, even going back over a week, it's still not as high as we had seen it on occasion. But that's a really low week. So the question is that to do with weather, or is that to do with Ukrainians not having as many drones around, or is it to do with the Russians not having as much artillery there as they would like, you know, running out of artillery? So interesting statistic there in that category. 50 vehicles and fuel tanks, fairly high there. No Andrew Perpetual loss list today. We are going to go to Kriegsforscher, who is a source who's fighting up in the Kursk area on the western edge of that salient. Today we were attacked by 9 BMD-2-4Ms. Only 2 of them managed to retreat. With the help of mines, my company stopped 2 BMD-2s and 1 BMD-4M. After that, they were destroyed by FPV drones. So there he lists the losses from the 234th VDV Regiment of 8 vehicles there. And it's very funny to see how everyone thinks that FPV rules the way. The rest of the column was stopped, destroyed by ATGMs. Only after that, FPV drones started working. In general, I see that approximately 10 to 15% of AFVs were destroyed by FPV, during the move. So that's really interesting, because we think when we look at Andrew Perpetual's loss list, there's an awful lot of FPV drones there. Of course there are. That's what most of the footage comes from. But you're going to see fewer bits of footage of ATGMs working. And sometimes you will see unknown cause. Andrew Perpetual often puts unknown cause, and then after that, hit by an FPV drone. So these ones that are hit by ATGMs will then be fundamentally taken out, or taken out even more by FPV drones. So you might be forgiven for thinking, well, FPV drones do everything, but actually often it's mines that incapacitate them, or as he's saying up here, ATGMs are very active in the Kursk area. So yeah, nevertheless, there was another attack on the 10th. There was another attack by the 237th VDV regiment, and that led to 9 losses there. And then he lists who they're fighting against in that area. So for 2 days, they've lost 12 AFVs, 4 IMVs as armoured fighting vehicles, 4 infantry mobility vehicles, equivalents to like Humvees, and 1 IMR2. Is that a recovery vehicle there? I'm not sure. Anyway, a lot of losses, and that's just indicative of the whole front line. But of course, the Russians still move on, don't they? So not too much in this category today. I'm going to go to Russia on fire already. Now, I don't know whether to include this in the strikes. Initially, I did. I've moved it here. Don't really know, and there's a bit of a confusion as to what was in this warehouse. But anyway, hashtag Russia on fire. Another massive warehouse is burning in Russia tonight, says Tim White. This one is filled with plastic products, according to journalists in Novosibirsk. The roof has already partially collapsed. Now, if we go on and see this from afar, you can see the size of the fire. Really, really significant. So Novosibirsk in Russia, says no reports, what is reported as army supply warehouse or warehouses are on fire. The blaze has spread to 7,000 square meters. That's a really, really big fire. And then this morning, Anton Gerashenko says, last night, Russian media reported a large fire in Novosibirsk, Russia. Its area was at least 5,000 square kilometers. According to some sources, it was the warehouse of a company that ensured the activities of strategically important facilities and enterprises of Russia, which is a kind of vague statement, isn't it? So who knows? Different claims as to what was in that warehouse. Was it struck by drones? I don't know. Was it just a random fire? No idea, but really big. And then I think this is a different one. It's a different place in Altai Krai. A fire broke out at a warehouse of building materials and flammable substances. The fire is 2,000 square meters and is spreading. It's in Siberia. That looks to be a different fire, but another huge fire taking place there. They are 10 a penny these days, it appears. And those are not insignificant fires either. Right, we're going to move on to strikes. And it was a terrible, terrible night for the Ukrainians last night. I said there were 1 or 2 options to explain the lack of Shahed drones being flown over the previous 2 nights. Indeed, if we go to interceptions, this is only interceptions, not the numbers of drones in total, but we see that last night 65, 0, 4, so it's a 0 and 4. That 65 is a cutoff from the massive attack that was last night, so that's only partially the number from last night. But the 2, 3, well, actually, if we go back for 5 nights, so 0, 4, 14, 22, 29, 19. That's not the 89, 83, 64 over here. So even when we sort of see the numbers tick up from 0, 4 and 14 to 22 and 29 and 19, those aren't particularly high numbers compared to what we have seen. So the last 5 nights have been 6 nights. Previous 6 nights to last night were either no drones or very, very low numbers, comparatively speaking. So I gave 2 options. One, they can't produce enough drones. Then maybe the drone factory had been hit or something like that. Or 2, they're stockpiling for a massive attack. But actually, number 1 is also relevant in number 2. So if you are stockpiling, it means you can't send huge numbers of drones and stockpile. In other words, you're not making enough drones as you would like. So there is, there's that element, but more realistically, they're waiting for a massive attack, and that massive attack was last night. So, as Jay in Kyiv says, the day after Trump, he doesn't quite announce that Ukraine will no longer be allowed to. So, the day after Trump announces that he's vehemently opposed to distant strikes into Russia, the Putin regime resumes a large-scale missile and drone attack. The US just still has no idea what Russians are, says Jay in Kyiv. I'm so forlorn about the incoming administration and what the rhetoric presently is. So last night, 81 out of 94 missiles were shot down. So 94 missiles in total. Again, if we look, and these are just shot down missiles though, so bear that in mind. 94 when we have 02, 002, 002, 003, 01, 086. So the last one was on the 29th. What are we? The 13th. So that's 2 weeks. We're going, it looks like there are 2 week cycles here. That was then a case of, 94 missiles fired, 81 shot down. 2 weeks ago, there were 83 shot down. So fairly similar to then. And just a few days before that, there were 89 shot down. So they had quite a lot. Oh, no, that's not. No, that I was lying. That's drones. Sorry. Previous to that, 86, 001, 000. You know, it seems like once every 2 weeks, or in that case, 10 days previously. So once every 10 days, and now it was 2 weeks ago. And then actually, before that, really low numbers of missiles for many weeks. Goodness me, if we look at that long line of not a lot of missiles certainly intercepted and therefore shot. Goodness me, it's like a month. You had 21 on the 3rd of September, and there's basically 0, give or take, up until where do we have it? My goodness, 18th of November. So wow, just a huge gap between 112 being sent, and then only 10 days. Obviously, stockpiling still had over all of that period. Still had some to send, and they waited 10 days for some reason. Sent 86, and then waited a couple of weeks, and then sent a whole host over last night. So 81 out of 94 missiles were shot down. That's actually a really good interception rate of missiles. Depends what they are, though. Like, it says 80 of them are the KH-101 or KH-555. I don't know what that one... That looks like an Iskander-M. So a ballistic missile. One Iskander was shot down, actually. But I don't know of those ones that weren't shot down what missiles they were. And then 193 drones sent. Almost 200 drones. Phenomenal. I think, is that the largest? 185 is the total number of drones shot down. Now, that's not the General Staff figures, because the General Staff cut their figures off halfway through the night in order to compile them for the morning. So you won't see that on, say, Dell Stats and the General Staff. But in terms of the biggest number of drones we've seen, that's got to be up there, if not a record breaker for a single night. 185 of them shot down. So it only needs 8 to have got through. Well, that's exceptional in terms of, you know, dealing with such a huge wave, especially when you got missiles as well. 105 of the 185 were taken down due to electronic warfare, so that's good news as well there. Now, Zelensky has announced that 81 missiles intercepted. 11 of those were intercepted by F-16s, so they have done a pretty good job. This is one of the largest attacks on our energy infrastructure, President said. And here is here are the routes of some of the different munitions last night. I'm pretty sure this is from last night's attack. Yeah, the 13th of the 12th. So you've got a host of different targets there. You got Odessa down here. That looks like that's your ballistic missile there. That one. Aero, that looks like an aero ballistic. That's what that says, I think. Aero ballistic missile there. So don't know what type that would be, whether that's that Iskander-M or whether it's, no, because I think that is that Kinjal. I'm not too good on my Ukrainian alphabet here, but that could well be a Kinjal. It looks like that, which means all these white ones here heading into the west of Ukraine, up over towards Lviv area. And yeah, they were Kinjals. You've got cruise missiles of differing types all the way over to the west. You've got drones coming to a westerly direction, getting to sort of Khmelnytsky area. a little bit down to the Hungarian border there. We also have some over to the north. Directly in the middle, Kyiv actually didn't get too much attention, even though people were in the subways, air raids were going off because it's such a massive wave. But they're concentrating more over towards, I guess, Poltava area, Kharkiv up here, with a number of looks like ballistic missiles there, and then over various places, Dnipro, so on and so forth. So a real range of places that were struck, mainly the energy infrastructure. Now, according to videos from local residents, says Max24, Russian cruise missiles flew today at an extremely low altitude, so that air defense systems could not see and hit them. Here we have Zarina Zaporizhzhia saying, massive Russian missile attack. The energy infrastructure was hit. 50% of the country are without power. That is huge. And I was just watching CNN this morning. Didn't mention this at all. It's not one mention that I saw. They were talking about Russian prisons, and they had this segment on Russian prisons. But this is like one of the biggest attacks on Ukraine. It's not even freaking mentioned. And that's why people like Trump are happy to go about their days not sort of commenting on how terrible Russia are, because this kind of activity appears to have been normalized. Cruise missiles, ballistics, calibers, Kinzhals, Shahed drones, Kyiv, Khmelnytsky, Ivano-Frankivsk, that was one of the main areas hit, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kharkiv, Odessa, Vinnytsia, Cherkasy, Chernihiv regions, all over the shop last night, hit by, so much stuff, an awful lot of stuff. There you go. So, today they are picking up the pieces in terms of energy. Due to the strikes, Ukrainigo has ordered disconnections for 3 out of the 6 consumer groups. Lots of Ukrainians are currently without power, 50% indeed. Russia deals a massive blow to Ukraine's thermal power plants, says DTEK, the energy company, whose thermal power plants were hugely hit last night, says the Kiev Independent. People in the subways were sheltering. You got dogs and people, families, men, women, children. Subway used as a shelter instead of good sleep in school. Our kids hide from missiles, says Anton Gerashenko. Again, where's the reporting on this? Seeing the people flooding into the subways for shelter. Okay, moving on. Although, I really can't overemphasize how, devastating attacks like these are on a nightly basis. And this is one that has really, really caused a lot of damage to the energy infrastructure. Just get this source sorted out. Yeah, so here's an example of a missile that's been shot down KH-555 somewhere in the Ivano-Frankivsk area. According to Zelensky, F-16 jets aided the air defense. Right. There are a few things to say about previous strikes. This is Thierry Schmidlin, who is a great supporter of the channel. He says, or this is a copy of a comment that he put on YouTube. He says, Taganrog. So when the Ukrainians struck Taganrog now 3 nights ago, there was a repair plant and an aviation base as well that was struck. Taganrog repair plant has a major military airfield that was attacked, and a secondary emergency part near the sea with a runway. At the northeast of the runway, there is a plant. The plant repairs Il-76 bombers and converts them to A-50 AWACS. Those are those big radar planes. It's the location of the Beriev Aerospace Company, the only one that does the job for the whole of Russia, and their one and only industrial facility. That's why Russia was so worried. So there was talk about them exacting revenge for this strike on Taganrog, and I wonder whether last night, to be honest, they've been stockpiling anyway, clearly, for last night. So I doubt it was a reaction to Taganrog, but, it fits in with that narrative. Not only old Il-76s can no more be accurately maintained, says Thierry, but their old fleets of A-50s can't be serviced or extended anymore if that facility is destroyed. That target is hugely more important than the Bryansk oil depot that was hit on the same night. And I was questioning why they were talking about retribution for this strike and not, say, the oil refinery that was massively on fire that was struck the same night. And that is obviously, and as Thierry points out here, because it's a supremely important site, evidently. And that's what I was saying yesterday, that this must be a really high value target. And that's exactly what Thierry's saying there, showing here the areas of two important aspects of the, although they're not exactly right next to each other, but two aspects of the airbase and repair facilities there in Taganrog. Right, moving on, the Ukrainians reportedly attempted to strike the oil refinery yesterday in Novoshatinsk and Rostov region. 5 drones were shot down. This was not last night. This was actually this was yesterday during the day, or at least early in the evening. It's reported my time, 7:39 here, so 9:39 in Ukraine. According to the acting head of the region, Yuri Slyusar, no damage or casualties were reported, but all 5 drones were shot down, say the Russians. Russian monitoring channels did report last night possible ATACMS and ballistic missile strikes on Rostov. Haven't heard anything since then, though, so I don't know if the Ukrainians did much to Russia, because there's so much news about what the Russians did to Ukraine. Now, the Romanian government has come out and approved 2 draft laws allowing the armed forces to intercept and neutralize drones entering Romania's airspace during peacetime. In other words, if then Romania aren't at war, that's not to say that there's peace over the border. Essentially, if Russian drones come into Romanian airspace, they can be shot down. The initiatives will soon be voted on by Parliament, after which they'll be signed into law by the President, if that goes through. So that'll be good news, to a little bit of help from Romania there, possibly in shooting down some of these drones that go, particularly in the Odessa area, on the River Danube, where you've got a couple of ports there, Ishmael and Reni. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. Anton Gerashenko just comments on the strikes last night. If you say Putin stop, Putin won't stop. If you say Putin will stop arming and helping Ukraine and will forbid it to strike, Ukraine is now unarmed and not a threat to Russia, Putin won't stop. Ukraine has never been a threat. My country is a peaceful country that is forced to defend the lives of our people, fight for freedom and life. We have not to ask Putin to stop, but the English is a bit mashed here. We shouldn't be asking Putin to stop, but forcing him to stop. Ukraine cannot be a shield and defense of Europe without people, cities, and an energy system. Fighting to the last Ukrainian is not our plan and not our desire. The world security architecture is broken, but it was not just Putin who broke it. It was also broken by those who did not stand up to defend it, those who showed weakness, and those who chose to not to oppose Putin nor to hinder him. And he says we need stronger leaders and strong decisions. Otherwise, everything will descend into chaos. I think Europe needs to step up. The US seems to have just capitulated to the might of Russia. I think Trump is just a plaything of Putin. Max24 reports that Russian attacks against Ukraine's damaged power grid have increased the probability of a catastrophic nuclear accident, according to the US and European diplomats at an emergency meeting of the United Nations Atomic Watchdog. That's according to Bloomberg. So Ukraine faces rising risk of nuclear plants incident, the US warns. Moving on, Ukraine's largest steelmaker suspends operation at Pokrovsk coal mine. This is a real issue. So they've closed a coal mine that was still operating, and the Metinvest, Ukrainian's largest steel producer, suspended operations at the Pischany coal plant near the frontline town of Pokrovsk amid a rapid Russian advance. So the Russians are really close. Pierre sent me some photos of people they had evacuated from Pokrovsk to hospitals. I saw a horrific picture, someone with basically the whole shoulder missing, some old fella. It was just horrible. And he's saying, yeah, it's just really, really tough around there. So closing that coal plant down is huge. Like, this affects Ukraine's ability to make steel, which affects their ability to make weapons. Ukraine's largest steelmaker suspends operation at the coal mine there. It's not good. Not good. Right, the Russian Khmeimim Airbase in Latakia, Syria, is still completely packed with planes, missiles, and fuel trucks, etc. You can be sure that the new Syrian army has pointed many barrels, missiles, and drones at the location. Obviously, there are negotiations ongoing in the background. I just hope the Syrian new government, whatever shape and form it will take, will be able to stand up to the Russians. The Russians are negotiating supposedly, and the only thing that I can think that they have over the Syrians there, why the Syrians would entertain them, given that Russia has been the main force behind the death of those Syrians on behalf of the Assad regime, to which the rebels were against which the rebels were fighting. So it seems incredible that the Russians are being given this much elbow room. All I can think is that because you can argue about, well, would they switch to asking Russia now to support them in some kind of security architecture in Syria, given Israel might be wanting to take a bite or this or that or whatever. I think that's less likely than Russia just have a whole wad of cash that they're going to throw at the Syrians. Now, we know that Russia doesn't have much money, comparatively speaking. They're absolutely chomping through their reserves, but Syria equals their ability to make money out of Africa. And they get gold. We know they get diamonds from themselves, from Russia, but possibly also sort of blood diamonds from Africa. There's an awful lot of valuable resources that they could say, well, I tell you what, if you let us keep these bases, you can have a cut in these in this gold or this money coming out of Africa. Because at the end of the day, Russia have got to probably realizing that if they don't keep their bases in Syria, then they can't get any of that stuff out of Africa, or at least it becomes much more difficult. So they almost necessarily, I imagine, are going to be having to throw money and resources at the Syrian rebels to bribe them to allow the Russians to stay there. It's that important to them. Now, talking about an economy that's not doing well, we hear these horror stories about Russian aviation. I talked about this yesterday, how they're having to dig out these older planes, and here's an example of that potentially, where you've got a plane that's just covered in algae at the top. It's had a quick jet wash along the window area, but essentially this is what they're having to get out the warehouses because they're in dire straits. They're able to only manufacture 7 out of the 108 they were planning over the last, I guess, couple of years, and they have an air fleet that they are unable to maintenance effectively because of sanctions and a lack of support from Western aviation entities. So, yeah, desperate times for the Russians there. Okay, Zaporizhzhia, an unusual sight. I'll leave you with this. This is a herd of wild horses roaming through the streets of the cities. Most likely they were spooked at stables by the recent bombing and leapt out into a field. Alternatively, damage to field and fences may have let them simply trot free. And here you have horses just wandering through, quite a lot of horses as well, wandering aimlessly through Zaporizhzhia, playing follow the leader. I hope they get rounded up and get back to safety. There are so many ramifications to the war in Ukraine, aren't there? Anyway, I'm wearing my Vyshyvanka because I am looking forward to speaking to Jonathan and Rick and celebrating support for Ukraine. Please join us at 2:30 UK time in the afternoon. And thank you to Mark and Olena who got me this Vyshyvanka. I really appreciate you guys lots. Take care, y'all. Speak soon.